have been in product management for about 8 to 10 years now, but I didn't start out as a PM or knowing what a PM does, let alone having a desire to be one. I'm an engineer by education. What attracted me to engineering is the fact that engineers help problem solve. And I knew that as a detail-oriented person, I would love, problem solving and being an engineer. So my career journey began with my first gig right after my undergrad program. I worked as a software engineer for a telecom company, a startup in India. And I worked with a technology consulting company following that. And at that early point, I realized that I wanted to pursue a graduate program in computer science. So I did that. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I got my master's degree. And for those of you who know that, Charlotte is a large banking town. So I got into fintech mainly because I was at the right place at the right time. And I was recruited into a leadership development program in the technology group of one of the nation's largest banks, now Wells Fargo. And I spent around 7 to 8 years of my careers in different parts of the bank. And one of the benefits of working for a large corporation is that you can change departments, you can experiment with different roles, you can learn about different functions while putting yourself through not so drastic changes. And through this journey of experimenting about different teams, functions, and roles, I realized that the more I liked working on defining what to build more than coding, which is how you build things. And this what to build is mostly what product management is about. So after getting experience in one of the largest banks, in both the commercial part of the bank, which is, if you could think of it, that's more a B2B business, and the consumer part of the organization, which was more of a B2C business, business to consumer business, I felt the need to learn beyond my current role. And at this point, I wanted to experiment and join a smaller, much nimbler organization where I could end up having a bigger impact and I could create products and experiences much faster than what I was able to do before. So that led to my current position at Braintree, where I am part of the card processing team. Braintree is a PayPal service, and we enable seamless payment experiences for merchants. You may not have heard of us, but I'm pretty sure you've used our payments rail. And if you were wondering how, so anytime you take an Uber or you book an Airbnb or you buy a ticket for a sporting or music event via Ticketmaster, you're going through the payment rails that my team at Braintree is responsible for building and supporting. And I would say that's pretty impactful. And that level of impact and responsibility is what keeps me going in product management.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mini, for the lovely introduction. So, Mini, what is the role of a product manager?
That's a great question. In the simplest sense, a PM is accountable and responsible for everything related to their product. So you are the CEO of your product. And that's a very simplest sense. To kind of add more depth to that, a PM decides, as I said before, what features to be built, but there's beyond that. PM is also responsible to decide and to kind of come up with why should something be built. Not everything that comes as a feature should be built. It should be, ranked. It should even be scrapped and something that should not be considered. So the why of something is very important. And a PM is also responsible for when a feature or a product should be released in the market. And all of this facilitation, the facilitation of the what, the why, and the when throughout the organization to actually get a product to market, a product that brings value and provides delightful experience, is what a PM does. So some of the things that a PM does to kind of ensure all of that is to make sure that the PM should have a good understanding of the market. The PM should understand what your competitors are doing. as a PM, I want to understand the ins and outs of my customers. A PM should have a vision for your product and also evangelize that vision throughout the organization and translate that vision into a product roadmap. And a lot of that happens with not just saying, feature A needs to go, in Q1 or Q2, but also coming up with a go-to-market plan, and of course, delivering the actual product. In reality, the roles and responsibilities of a PM differs a lot from company to company, and it also depends on the product itself. So, I shared a little bit about my experience. I'll take an example from my past. So I was a PM responsible for creating a mobile wallet experience for customers of a financial institution. In that role, which was part of a large corporation at that time, I wasn't the one who came up with the vision, even though I was the PM driving the product or the feature. Or I wasn't the one who was asking why we need to build a mobile wallet. How would that drive key performance indicators for the organization? What I was responsible was to understand the competition. I had the responsibility to understand the customers, what personas we would target, and to maintain and develop a roadmap by defining what features would be part of an MVP release, what could come as round 2, what would come as round 3. So when I did that, I worked with UX designers. I sat down and did different customer studies on research. We would show them, a mock-up of what the front end would look like, and ask them about, do you like an experience which shows a carousel that you could swipe through, or would you prefer an experience that shows you a list of cards in your wallet? Like, what do you really prefer? So some of my roles and responsibilities in that organization and in that product were very different. I, as a PM, did not, I ended up providing a framework for the kind of user stories we need, but I had the support of a BA, a business analyst, who would actually write user stories. And I also had the support of project managers who drove delivery and came up with milestones and project plan. The same PM role in my current organization looks very different. So my current product does not have any front end or web experience. My customers today are merchants. They're not consumers, as I said, right now in a B2B space. And when I think about customer experience, I think about things like, so I'm building a feature. Will my merchants be able to process credit card transactions seamlessly? And what this really means is that as consumers, we all buy things online, or book a ride. And when we provide our card information into an app, into a website, an online service, we're providing a card information to a merchant. There's a complex set of interactions that are triggered to ensure the card payment is processed successfully. The payment goes from a merchant to a card processing service by Braintree. We take on the complexity of routing the payment to the right processors. It goes down to an entity like Visa or MasterCard, and then ends up into a bank which issued your credit card. And the bank essentially says, oh, Minnie is looking to do a $10 ride, all good, right? And I'm kind of simplifying this. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of edge cases, a lot of scenarios that could happen. So when I say I'm responsible for ensuring that we deliver a seamless experience, it means hiding all of these complex interactions for the merchants who use our processing services so that they can focus on running their business. And as a product manager, I'm responsible and I think about how do I enable experiences like that. So in contrast, the role of a PM in my current capacity has a higher degree of accountability, a higher degree of impact. I help define the vision of the product in my current role. And very specifically, I drive the why a lot. Anything that comes up has to be why should this be done? Why should we be building a feature that's requested by this merchant and not a feature that's requested by another merchant? And why now? So I'm also very hands-on in my current role, and I wear the project manager hat here as well. I drive dates and deliverables with my engineering team directly. I work very closely with operations, accounts, sales team, and define the go-to-market. So there are certain similarities of what I did as a PM in a previous role to what I do as a PM right now. But again, there's, what a PM does varies a lot, institution, organization to organization, and also different product roles within an organization could also be different.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you so much for letting us know such a valuable information. So, Winnie, what is your typical day as product manager?
A typical day is never boring, very always interesting. My day typically starts with a stand up with my team. So we follow an agile process, and stand-ups start as part of an agile team. We share updates on what we did yesterday. So I get together with my engineers, my engineering manager, tech lead, me as a PM. We share updates on what we did yesterday. What are we going to do today? And are there any blockers? And as a PM, I also use stand-up as an opportunity to provide additional context that is relevant to my team, to my engineering team on the work that they're currently doing. This is slightly different from, a very traditional stand-up is literally like, everyone just says what's going on, blockers, and they disperse for the day. I feel providing context as the PM is very important, and stand-up becomes an opportunity to kind of quickly just say, if my one of my engineers is working on a card related to processing for a certain merchant, and I got on a call with the account manager or the merchant yesterday, it's important to bring that context back and have the entire team hear that. So I like to structure, add on a little twist to the stand-up to do that. Some of my other things is I have one-on-ones with various partners and stakeholders. A PM needs to have a very good working relationship with their engineering manager counterpart. So I'll make sure that my engineering manager and I actually sync very regularly, apart from sitting next to each other and exchanging different updates. We also make sure that we have a structured one-on-one two times a week. I also have one-on-ones with other product managers, so that if there is a feature that we're building and the feature impacts a team which does the funding for our transaction, we'll have conversations and we'll have regular syncs on not just tactical issues, but how can we work better? How can strategically we do things that makes the organization better as well? And these things become important opportunities to share knowledge, to influence others in the organizations, and also to build relationships, which specifically for a PM, being able to connect my product and my team to the rest of the organization is very important. So I talked about stand-ups, I talked about one-on-ones. I typically end up spending some time participating in iteration planning with my tech lead and engineering manager counterpart for the upcoming sprint, that is the next sprint that the team's working on, so that we all have a good understanding of what work is the team picking next week. Some of my interaction, depending on the day and what's going on, is also dealing with interruptions. And interruptions could be things like urgent merchant requests, customer requests that come in, or production issues. And when some of this happens, as a PM, I jump in on issues that require an assessment or requires prioritization, providing context, communication, and I help my team clear the path so that the engineers can solve the problem and I can take care of the other things around it. Prioritization is another part of it. As a lot of these requests come in, understanding what the real problem or ask is and stack ranking it against other requests is something important. I'll end up talking to other PMs in my organization and say, hey, we have had 3 requests come in. What does it impact? What, does it impact a certain customer vertical, or does it impact just one merchant? And how do we kind of end up prioritizing things that way. The other thing that I'm getting very conscious to do, as you've heard, a lot of these things that happen are very tactical in nature. So to kind of make sure that I'm thinking about, long-term problems, solving the important problems and not just dealing with the urgent, I've started to put strategic time blocks on my calendar, a couple of days a week, so that I can focus on working on things like vision, and not just be consumed with the day-to-day running of the product. And this is, what I like to think of as like brain time, of thinking about how do we solve a particular tricky issues. I spend some of this time writing papers. So what I mean by papers is context-setting documents for others to consume in the organization that give an overview about what is the problem we're solving, who are we solving for, those kind of things. And that's how I typically end up spending my day.
Thank you so much, Minnie. So apart from this, what is the most fun part of your job?
I thrive on learning new things and doing a variety of things. And the fun thing about being a PM is that I get to do exactly that. I get to work on multiple initiatives at a given time, and I get to solve problems of varying scale. So I just talked about how my typical day looks. I work on a wide range of tasks every day. And the fun part is it's not repetitive tasks. So for example, one of my key initiatives right now is in a testing phase. So I actually so last week I spent a lot of time defining test scenarios, detailed test cases, and then coordinate things with other partners and how we would test. And starting this week, I'm actually helping run those test cases themselves, helping record the results and communicate that. And as my initiative moves from the testing phase to a phase of like getting ready to launch in the market, I also then focus a lot of my time defining go-to-market strategy. I'm thinking about how do I create launch checklist for when we're done testing. And as part of like this entire journey, I'm able to visualize a product and actually see it come to life in front of my eyes and being live in the market, which is both exhausting, but it's also exhilarating at the same time. And the other fun part that I get to do this is I get to do all of this while I work with super smart but down to earth individuals. And I work hard while we trade bad jokes and silly emojis. So the part about working on challenging problems with smart and interesting people is what's the most fun part about the job.